am at Wright Square, excuse me, where Alice Riley was hanged. It's said that wherever you walk in Savannah, you are walking on graves. We can't leave Mercer Williams' house out of the Savannah series. Like, who raised us? Oh my God. Well, welcome back to the Savannah series, and this is part 2. And today we're going to be talking about some other places in Savannah that I got to visit while I was down there a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to start with this place downtown that it's pretty it's pretty well known. So, you ever heard of a place that is said to have good bones? Like, it's like, oh, this house got good bones. Like, oh my God. You know. Well, the Marshall House, which is what we're going to talk about, takes the old adage to heart. So, let's get into it. So, the history of the Marshall House begins in 1851 with a woman named Mary Marshall. Mary Marshall was a businesswoman who had properties across Savannah, and when she saw the railroad was coming into town, so they're building the railroad down here in Georgia, she decides that I gotta get on this because, like, this is gonna be some good money. So she had other properties across Savannah, and the Marshall House will be the most recent property that she built at this time. And the Marshall House is a hotel, by the way, in case you didn't know. So she built the Marshall House, and the Marshall House was apparently state of the art for that time. It had 4 stories. It boasted a gentleman's dining room. It boasted a women's dining room, smoking room, library, and a parlor. And of course, you had the lobby. Now, the crowning jewel of the hotel, which will be built later, was a wrought iron balcony. So that will be actually added in 1857 by another proprietor other than Ms. Marshall. So the Marshall House is situated on Broughton Street. And this was real big back then because Broughton Street is a shopping district in Savannah. It was like the place to shop. And it still is. I mean, there's still like places to shop basically up and down Broughton Street. So, of course, this hotel couldn't be fancy for too long because this hotel will serve as a hospital actually twice, well, 3 times technically. So, during 2 yellow fever epidemics, this will become a hospital for those people who were sick with yellow fever. So, first off, let me tell you, as a nursing student, I feel I should probably tell you where this illness comes from and just how horrible it is because it is still around today. And a lot of people really don't know where yellow fever comes from, what are the symptoms, what to watch out for. And oddly enough, this illness rather, is popping back up across the South, especially here in Georgia because of the mosquitoes. So there's a clue. So the yellow fever virus is carried by the female Aedes aegypti mosquito. Now, once bitten, people can transmit this disease or this virus to each other. The symptoms are fevers, chills, severe headaches, like the worst headache of your life, as the doctor I work with says, back pain, general body aches. So, like, body aches all over the body, nausea, vomiting, fatigue, and weakness. Now, serious cases of the illnesses are characterized by jaundice or yellowing of the whites of the eyes or skin, and also organ failure and even bleeding. And this is not just like, oh, I cut myself. No, like, you could bleed from your eyes. It's pretty gross. So basically, hemorrhaging is what they would call that in the medical field. Um, so this is giving you an idea of how severe this illness is and why we might have some leftover energy from when this was um, a hospital thrice. So, let's give you an idea of how serious this these yellow fever epidemics were. So, in one epidemic that occurred in 1820, which was previous to when the Marshall House was built, the death toll was 700 people. That's a lot of people. There was another epidemic in the 1700s that they basically said, this is coming from WSAV down in Savannah, that decimated the population just about of Savannah, because you got to think about it. They don't have vaccines like we do today. The yellow fever vaccine only just came out in the 30s, in 1936. This vaccine is almost as old as my grandmother. So this gives you an idea of like how serious this illness is, and again, why we have energy from that time period. Or a little bit of energy, because there's another thing we're about to talk about, another big event in Savannah that I think takes the cake for why there's so much energy in this particular hotel. So, the epidemics are over, and this is when it gets remodeled in 1857, and they add that gorgeous wrought iron balcony. I'm going to post a picture. I mean, it's beautiful. There's rocking chairs up there for you to sit. Oh, my nose is itching. But there's rocking chairs for you to sit on. I mean, it's gorgeous. That is until the 1860s. So, 1857, they remodel. The 1860s comes around, and a little thing called the Civil War is popping off here in the United States. So the hotel will yet again serve as a hospital. And I mean, it makes sense because this hotel had 135 rooms, or at least today it has 135. And so I think it had the same amount when it was first built. But it has a lot of rooms and a lot of space for people to be placed who are injured during this war. So, like I said, it's a hospital specifically for Union troops, being that there was a lot of fighting going on around Savannah. So, at this time, I think when it becomes a hospital, Sherman's March to the Sea has just occurred. And basically, just a little side blurb on what Sherman's March to the Sea is for people that are not from here. Sherman's March to the Sea is a thing, an event that happened, rather, that basically this general by the name of Tecumseh Sherman, William Sherman, whatever. He was a huge racist, apparently. So, anyways, he came down through the South, and what he was doing was destroying supply lines and, plantations, homes, businesses, whole cities. Like Atlanta got taken out by Sherman's March to the Sea. And basically, he's just trying to cripple the Confederacy, or the South at that time. So when he gets to Savannah, like they always tell this story where they're like, they were like, oh, it's so pretty, he didn't want to take out Savannah, but there was some fighting, so there was some damage, but I don't think it was nearly as close to what he did to Atlanta. So back to the hospital. So this is a little history lesson. Before we get to the ghost, I promise we're going to get there. So there were two types of hospitals during the Civil War. That's the general hospitals and field hospitals. So general hospitals were regulated and clean. Basically, mildly similar to a hospital you or I might stay in here in the 21st century. These were further away from the front lines and located in major cities such as Philadelphia for the north or Knoxville for the south in Tennessee. So soldiers would arrive at these hospitals after being stabilized at a field hospital. And if you survived a field hospital, you're a trooper. So field hospitals are, on the other hand, they're the total opposite. They were located near the front lines and served as an initial treatment center for soldiers taken off the battlefield. So these field hospitals were often housed in churches, homes, barns, and other local buildings. And since these weren't proper hospitals, when surgeries occurred, they would occur anywhere or on any flat surface, such as doors, dining room tables, you name it. So, also, the surgeons were not well equipped, and often these field hospitals were not staffed well at all. And of course, that compounded with not having the right tools, it makes for a pretty bad situation for the soldier involved. And I would even argue to say the doctor involved. Like that's straight up PTSD waiting to happen. So, think about a modern hospital, and again, that's the complete opposite. So, if you're still not getting the picture, let's let Fanny Ricketts of Manassas tell you what happened. So this Manassas is a town in Virginia. So this is her. 2 men were dead and covered with blood. Two men and are covered with blood are carried down the stairs as I waited to let them pass. On a table in the open hall, a man was undergoing amputation of the leg. At the foot of the stairs, 2 bloody legs lay, and through all, I went to my husband. So she was going to her husband who was ill or who was injured. In the opposite room are 10 dying or wounded men. Next to us are 3, one with a gangrenous thigh where it is amputated. Look up gangrene. I don't think I can post a picture. Or I will, but I'll blur it out. But just look up gangrene. And she says the smell is horrible. So in another room are 5 Carolinians, 1 dying. Downstairs there are some 40 men in various stages of death or possible recovery. Blood runs on the floor. The smell is dreadful. No language can describe it. So what type of hospital was the Marshall House? My bet is it's a field hospital because of what was found. Workers unearthed. Wait for it. Take a breath. Workers would unearth amputated limbs of Union soldiers under the floorboards. The first time I heard that, I was young. Like a lot of these ghost stories I heard when I was very young. And that, I'm 35 now, and that till this day messes me all the way up. Like it just, ew. Gross. And there are no, I can't even say there are far worse stories. I might do a thing on Civil War, ghosts in general. But there are other stories like this across the country, talking about limbs, piles of limbs outside windows. It's gross. So yeah, they found the floorboards under the hotel. They found the bones. See, I'm scrambled. They found the bones under the floorboards of the hotel. It's been said that they cleared the remains, whatever that means. So I'm really hoping I'm pretty sure they interred them in a military cemetery. But much like the other story, one of the other stories we're going to cover, it's too little too late. So guests at the Marshall House report seeing and smelling the spirits. So they say the scent of rotting flesh often wafts through parts of the hotel, as though there's a phantom walking around with gangrene. Specifically, there's a specific gangrene, dry gangrene. You got wet and dry gangrene, and both are nasty. But I heard that the dry gangrene smells the worst. So there's also a story where a Civil War soldier walks around asking after his arm supposedly, but I think this is a ghost tour type story, or where they just say that just to scare you, because that just doesn't even sound. Oh no, like that. It just sounds very like camp and made up. But if that's true, that's terrifying. So guests also report ghost children, because it is not a haunted hotel without ghost children. Think about The Shining. The Marshall House is the response to, I was gonna say the Overlook, the response to the Stanley Hotel. Like they're neck and neck. So I'm thinking that these ghost children are either yellow fever victims, and you know, I did think about this too, might even have been Civil War victims. But I don't know. It sounds like those little ones just want to play at 2 in the a.m., which is creepy. They also say there are the spirits of like, or rather, you hear babies crying, but this is whole. I'm gonna be a skeptic for a second. I'm gonna step outside of myself and say that this is a hotel, and babies, they have no schedule. Like I work in a pediatrics office, and I can tell you from what I hear of newborns, they have no schedule. They get up when they feel like it, when they're hungry. They're on their own thing. So that one, I kind of have to be like, but it's still creepy, even if you're like in bed and you're like, I hear a child crying, and it's 2 in the morning, and I'm in an old hotel. Immediately skeeved. So let's get on to Right Square. So I put this on TikTok. I actually put the Marshall House on TikTok as well. But Right Square is on some next level ish. Like, I think I said this in the TikTok when I was showing y'all like what was what there. That square is significantly cooler than all the other like temperature wise, than all the other squares that we walked through in Savannah. I was like, I don't like this. Like I was hurrying. It was like broad daylight. It was morning, and I was like, I gotta get out of here. But because I love y'all, and because I wanted to see, when people talk about Right Square, what Right Square looks like, I had to go in and check it out. So, enter Irishman Alice Riley and her husband Richard White. So they arrived in Savannah in December of 1733, and she and her husband would go to work as indentured servants for a man named William Wise across the river on Hutchinson Island. So Wise was said to be an abusive old man, and he required them to bathe and groom him every day, in addition to other work. Now, according to the legend, Alice and her husband had had enough of this, and they would drown him in a tub of water. Now, let's take a little bit of a side historical note. The Irish were not very well liked in the United States. I mean, probably not as much as black people were not liked, but they were like the new like ill immigrants kind of thing. And I'm thinking that this story has a little bit of smear campaign on it for the Irish people, but let's go back to the story. So they would murder him in a tub of water. They actually drowned him in a tub of water. Like while they were bathing him, they were like, put him in the water. So in my opinion, I don't think that this was the reason that he was murdered. I think that there's something even like it's. I think it was a justified death, and I'll tell you why in just a few seconds. So the couple would flee to an area of Savannah that still exists called the Isle of Hope, which at that time would have been like leaps and bounds away from where they were staying. And unfortunately, the couple would be apprehended and sentenced to death. Alice would plead her innocence, but no one was hearing that because they were just like, "No, you're an immigrant. We don't believe you. You're an indentured servant and an immigrant. So yeah, we're not here for that." And Richard, her husband, would be hanged first, but Alice would be spared because she was pregnant by William Wise. So that's why I say that this murder may have been justified because she was obviously sexually assaulted by him, and they were like, "Nah, you can't hang with us." So apparently, William Wise was a lich, as the British say. But once the baby was born, Alice would be hanged. And then sadly, 45 days later, her baby boy would die. So this is where the ghost story begins with Alice Riley. So, of course, Alice now haunts that very place where she was hanged at Wright Square. And by the way, Wright Square is said to be the oldest square in Savannah. So people encounter a woman dressed in 18th century clothing, and she will approach the person asking for help as she is looking for her lost son. And they said she usually approaches pregnant women asking after her lost son. So don't be there at night because she might be out asking. So joining Alice in Wright Square is Chief Tomochichi. Now, if you grew up in Georgia, you know this name. Especially like now, especially like first grade students, because my mom was a teacher, they talk about this man to no end, which they should, because I mean he's pretty influential in establishing Georgia as a colony, and the colony flourishing into what it is today. So also, it's pretty appropriate that he would haunt this square because he was buried there. So who is Chief Tomochichi? So he was a leader of the Yamacraw tribe who inhabited the area that would become Savannah when James Oglethorpe arrived to the area. So that's why if you ever look at a Google map, you'll notice that the part where like River Street and all that is called Yamacraw Bluff because Savannah sits on a bluff overlooking the Savannah River. Like you don't really think about it until you walk down on the River Street, but that's why it's called Yamacraw Bluff. So Chief Tomochichi would provide assistance to the developing colony alongside Mary Musgrave, who was a Creek English woman. She was basically like a translator. And his assistance was so invaluable to Oglethorpe that he would take him back to England for a visit. So they would actually go on like a diplomatic visit, and they would also go on an expedition to establish Georgia's southern boundaries. Unfortunately, Tomochichi would die on October 5th, 1739, in his 90s. I thought he was going to die like in his 50s, 60s. No, this man lived to his 90s. So, he was actually given a British military funeral and buried under a pyramid of stone composed of rock from the area. But in the 1880s, the Gordon Company, that's Juliet Gordon Lowe's people, well, I think because that's her mom's people, company would take down the statue and build a monument of their own. Because of course they would. It's been said that in the process of building this statue, they actually scattered the chief's remains, which is not great because also the Yamacraw believed that the bones of a person, that was where the spirit was closest. Like the spirit was in their bones, which makes sense, because it was that person's bones, remains, what have you. But the damage was done. Oh, wait, hold on, time out. So let's go back. After hearing this, Nellie Gordon, Juliet Gordon Lowe's mom, so Juliet Gordon Lowe of Girl Scout fame, her mom would have a monument rebuilt to Tomochichi, but the damage was done. And this is where the legend comes from of Tomochichi haunting Wright Square. So there's a legend that says that if you walk around his statue, or like that the stone that they have put there 3 times and call his name, he will respond. Or actually, no, if you walk around his, I'm so sorry, if you walk around his statue 3 times, he'll supposedly show up, um, and respond. Honestly, though, I read that that's not like that's another thing that was created because Savannah is like their bread and butter is like tourism and ghosts. But I mean, I'm 1,000% sure that he is hanging out in that square. But also, I don't even think you have to pull a Candyman for the chief, for a chief to walk around the square. He's a chief. He don't need your help. Like, he can just come out if you want to on his own accord. So, yeah, I would expect, like I said, I would expect him to be out and about all this time on his own. So now, let's see. I got another story for y'all because the next one is going to be a big one and I need all of that attention. So, like, I need all that episode for the other story that I'm going to talk about. So, this is a bonus for part 2. So, let's go. This is a personal story. So let's take it back to around 2014. I had recently gone through a horrible breakup. I mean, it was rough. Like, I've never felt like that before. And, like, I'm smiling now, but that ish had me concernicus. And I would become depressed. This wasn't a great time. But one thing that could soothe the breakup burn for even just a little bit was a trip to Savannah. And that is just what happened. Like, actually, that whole stretch when I went to Savannah, like, it was weird. Like, that's not part of the story. That was just crazy. But let's get back to it. So, I arrived in Savannah, breakup burn and all, and immediately, Savannah's like aloe vera. Like, I wish I had discovered Bird's cookies while I was down there. But I would discover that a couple years later. So, anyways. We get down there and we immediately fall into our Savannah routine. Like, we legit have routine. So, like, we go to River Street, we do all the things. And while we were hitting our old haunts, pun all the way intended, yes, haunts, we stopped to eat at a place on River Street called the Shrimp Factory. So, as I'm sitting talking with my mom and waiting for our food to come, I started to feel eyes on me. So, also my grandma was with us. So let's just lay it out for you. Ooh, sorry. I'm sitting here. She's sitting to the left of me, or to the right of me, rather. And then my mom is sitting across from me. So, like, my mom is the camera. And we're talking, and I start to feel eyes on me. It's like boring into me. And they're, like, on my back, like the middle of my back. And I kind of whip around and no one is there because there was a table back there. And I thought, oh, somebody must have sat down. I wasn't paying attention, but no, there was no one back there. So the whole time we're sitting there, I'm having this feeling of being watched. And eventually we leave the restaurant and continue bouncing around Savannah. I had to go look at the ocean. So we went there. And later that night, I'm laying in bed and I feel a hand on my shoulder. Just a light touch. And I wake up thinking it's my mom, but when I turn over, my mom's asleep in her bed, and my grandma is also asleep in her bed. And so the room that we had was like a suite. So I'm in the room by myself, and I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, oh, here we go. So I don't know how I stayed calm, but I did. So fast forward to the weekend after that, I'm back at my dorm the week after we came back, and that breakup burn is starting to tingle again, like the skin's not healed. And I guess it's because I was back in the environment in which the breakup had happened. And at that moment, okay, let me go back. Let me slide it in for y'all. So at that moment, I began to smell seawater. And it's very specific to a tall ship. So it's like salt, tar, and then like this sweet smell. Like I can't explain it. And at first, like I was like, oh, maybe we were at the beach, so maybe I got some salt in my, like some that smell in my shoes. And I'm like, no, 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 this is a smell from a tall ship, and I know what a tall ship smells like because we've been on one in Baltimore. So I know that specific smell. And y'all, at that moment, I'm pulling all of the notes from intro to psych out. Like, I'm like, maybe it's, I I don't even know what I was looking for with intro to psych. But that didn't work. So I let it ride. And this scent went on for months. So when I walked around campus or felt a little vulnerable, the smell would be there. I did confide in a friend of mine who said that I'd been in denial about it. And I don't remember her exact words, but basically she said I'd picked up a ghost. And while I believe in ghosts, I'm like, nah, girl. I'm like, nah, sis, that ain't me. I mean, like, yeah, I wanted Lydia Deetz to be like a big sister, but like, I myself am not the strange and unusual. Wait a minute. And she went on to say, she was like, okay, let me tell you about your life. So she said it was more than likely a sailor who maybe sensed my sadness. And I'm still like, girl, stop. Girl, you playing. Like, you're just, I don't know what you're trying to do, but this is not the moment. So by summer, which I say summer, but really it was April, which might as well be summer in Alabama because that's where I went to college. I was feeling better, and I told the spirit that he could go back. Like that, like one day I just sat down and I was like, I'm good. And thank you so much for your comfort, because by then I was like, yeah, this is happening. But I think he's still around because every once in a while I get a hint of that same scent. Like it'll just waft, and I'll be like. So that story was touching, but this next story is cute yet terrifying. So this is a story about something I observed at the hotel that I actually stayed in while we were down there a couple weeks ago. So this is literally a year or two later after the experience I just told y'all about. So my mom and I were back in Savannah this time for my birthday, which is like a common thing that we do. So my mom and I were just coming in after dinner at our hotel, and she stopped to get something or to talk to the concierge about something, and I decided to sit down. So I'm taking in the atmosphere of the lobby and people watching, just looking around because they had like a social hour going on, and I'm just, got me a Sprite because it was super hot. Like it can get really humid even at night. So I'm just sitting there sipping my Sprite, and taking people in. And just then, I see this little girl walking in with her parents. So it's clear that the family has just come from the pirate's house because this little girl is wearing one of those they have like these paper pirate hats that they give to children, and she's carrying a parrot plush, and it was so cute. Like it was like looking at a white version of me. Like I'm like, oh, look at me. I'm gonna do that with my little one someday. And my girl, little sis, was on cloud 9 million. She was in the stratosphere. Like, she was just excited. And in observing her, I noticed she's looking upward to her left and talking to someone who isn't there. And I'm like, maybe it's a drop dead Fred situation. I don't know her life. So it's like she's talking to an adult, basically. And I'm thinking, like I said, imaginary friend, drop dead Fred, all of the things. But something feels off, and my spidey senses start tingling. So, side note, y'all, sometimes I feel things. And this was one of those. This is like like right in that first part of when I started to be like, I got something going on, you know. But like I said, something feels off, and she's playing too hard. Like even as a kid, I didn't talk to my imaginary friends out in the open, so I wouldn't expect her to, but she was. But the paranormal mill in my head is starting to churn, and it really pops off when the mom says, you know, we'll call little girl Julie. Okay, Julie, come on, it's time for bed. So she says this to the little girl, and the little girl raises her hand in the air as though she's taking the hand of an adult. And at this moment, my mouth is in free fall. Like, my mouth has gone full Tower of Terror. My girl was down, like, on my lap. And for the rest of the night, I wondered how that little girl, like about that little girl, because the whole time my brain was thinking, did I see what I saw? Like, my brain is still asking that, because my girl was like pretend I'm a little girl, and she had her hand up, and she was like you're holding someone's hand, and I think I kept it to myself. I did tell a friend later on when I got back, and they were like, they're from Savannah, or rather a coworker, and they're from Savannah, and they were like, sounds about right. And like that night, my brain is like, whose hand was she holding? What was that about? Strange. Like, that's all I could say. That's all I could say. I mean, I started coming up with my own theories, and I was like, girl, you gotta go to bed. You can't worry about that. First of all, you might attract whatever that is. So you might want to chill, flip out. But yeah, so those are my two personal ghost stories. On part 3, which is, it's coming out later because we will be down there sometime during the fall. Well, sometime during the fall. It'll be some in October, and well, hopefully the hurricanes don't go crazy like they did. But on the next episode, I'm going to talk about Mercer Williams' house. That was such a I'm sorry, that was so goofy. Mercer Williams' house and the murder of Danny Hansford. And I'm gonna do a bonus because we're gonna talk about Tybee Island and how flippin' scary that place can be. Because good lord, here's another little bonus. So that same trip with the breakup and all that, we were going to dinner on Tybee Island, and it was getting dark early, so we were driving down the island's highway right along. There's like a walking trail that used to be the railroad to Tybee Island for people from Savannah, and on the other side is the marsh. And y'all, I see these two people, or two kids, walking. And like there is a boy and a girl. The boy he looks like he's about like preteen. No, not preteen. He looks like he's about teenage, and the little girl looks like she's gonna look preteen. And the little girl's like in this long dress, like this flowing dress. And the boy is in, just like pants and shirt. And I'm like, what the fuck did I just see? And I'm like, no child is going to be walking down the island's highway at night because they don't have lights out there because of the wildlife, the marine life. So I don't know what I saw, but I think it's related to some things that happened around that area. So yeah, so we're gonna be talking about Tybee Island. I'm gonna tell y'all about Bloody Point Beach, which is on Dofsky Island, which is not part of Georgia, but it's like, you know, part of the low country. And of course, that'll be part 4, actually. So I'm gonna do a bonus part for y'all. So we're gonna have part 4, and then we're gonna have part 3. That'll be about Mercer House, Mercer Williams House as it's called now. And then part 4, we're going to talk about Tybee Island and Dofsky Island / Bloody Point Beach. So I will see you all on the next Painted Hank Savannah special. Actually, in between the Savannah special, I'm going to tell y'all about a movie that I recently watched, and I'm gonna suggest it for your, since we're getting into that the home stretch, Summerween / Halloween story. So there you have it. Please like and subscribe. So if you like this video, like it, and subscribe if you want to hear more ghost stories. And please leave a comment. I really enjoy comments, and really good, like, well, obviously I really enjoy nice comments. So yeah, I will see you all on the next Painted Hank. Bye.